I wanted to show off some of the cameras I have in my collection. Most of the cameras I have are pretty random, but these four are all part of a series. And believe it or not, despite how similar they look, they're actually made by 3 different companies. The oldest one right here is this cee-ay 35. This one was made in 1949. It was made by the Rangefinder Camera Corporation, which had earlier built the Perfex rangefinders. They only had this camera in production for about 8 months before they decided that they were going to stop making cameras altogether. It's a very simple camera. There's no interlock between the shutter and the film advance mechanism. So the film drags across here, and when it gets to a point, it pulls these gears tight, and you have to press this button to release it for the next shot. And on the front, there's a woolen sack shutter. You can click it as many times as you want. It's self-energizing, and there's no interlock with the film transport system. The camera has a built-in coupled rangefinder, which you use with this lever right here that moves the lens, and you can see there's a scale with a needle on the side that tells you the distance. In the back you have your viewfinder window, and then you use the rangefinder through this small separate window, which was pretty common at the time, but it would disappear on most cameras pretty soon after World War II. The Rangefinder Camera Corporation was also the first company to put a hot shoe on a 35mm camera. So this camera also has one, and back in 1949 that was still a rarity. In any event, by the end of 1949, Rangefinder Camera Corporation was not selling very many of their Perfex cameras. They decided to get out of the camera building business. They sold all the tooling and the designs to Ciro cameras in Ohio, and a few months later, Ciro came out with this, the Ciro 35 camera, and you can see that it's basically the exact same camera. There's a few minor differences. The knobs are different, for instance. This particular camera is quite early, as you can see the serial number. It was the 435th Ciro 35 off the production line. You can see it's pretty much exactly the same inside, but you can see that Ciro has engraved their company name on the top plate back here. Another difference between the cee-ay and the Ciro is that instead of chroming these parts, they just painted them silver to keep costs down. In fact, they were able to keep production costs low enough to make the Ciro 35 the cheapest 35mm rangefinder you could buy in the United States. This is the low-end model, which has a f4.5 lens and a top shutter speed of 1/150th of a second. This model cost only $39 in 1950, so it was a few bucks cheaper than the Argus C3, which cost about 44 bucks back then. The next camera in my collection is a black version of this camera. It has all the silver blacked out. That was an option. It also has the faster lens. This one has an f3.5 lens and a faster shutter. This one goes up to 1/200th of a second. And last but not least, I have this particular Ciro 35. This was the top-end model. It has a Rapak shutter, goes up to 1/400th of a second, has an f2.8 lens. This particular one was made by Graflex. Graflex bought Ciro out. So Graflex was the third company to manufacture this camera design. And not much has changed. They modified the rangefinder a bit. It's got a smaller window now compared to the older models, which had a larger window. But it's basically the same camera that came out in 1949. And so that's it. That's the story of the Ciro 35, the only American 35mm camera to be built by 3 different companies. Started out in 1949, and the last one was produced, I believe, in 1955.